Okay, I wanted to keep talking about. I really wanted to keep talking about evolution and really get some you to have some real faith that the Bible's true, creation's true, and evolution is a big conspiracy theory. Actually, evolution, I believe, is ridiculously implausible after studying it for many years um, and truly analysing evidence and looking at it in different views. I have had significant spiritual experiences, so the fact that God exists um, strongly made me motivated to want to study is evolution true. Okay, I know God is real. I know the Bible is true, but evolution questioned the accuracy, I guess, of the Bible or the interpretation of the Bible. That's what evolution brought into doubt. Can I trust the Bible? Is the Bible true? Can I trust it? Or do I have to interpret it through evolution theory, which, remember, isn't science, it's a theory, it's a theory of science? Or is it accurate? Can I trust it? What it says is accurate. So it was about literal versus non-literal, and it was about interpretation and all sorts of things, as I wanted to know as a Christian myself, my own belief system. Plus, I found when I witnessed to people, talked about my faith, that it came up a lot. So I was very motivated, and I studied it, and I wanted to find out the truth behind the whole thing. And categorically, I can say, after analysing, looking at it, and spending time looking into it, it isn't true. It doesn't stack up, and I am almost I there are so many I have so many questions about why people believe it, because when it's so obviously not true. When I looked into it, why are there so many scientists? And so I have various theories, and I've talked about some of them during some of this part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4 stuff, on what maybe why scientists believe it. Maybe they've just believed their colleagues have done their research properly, and they're just going on from their colleagues, and they haven't got the time to look into other areas of, because it's across evolution crosses multiple disciplines. Maybe they haven't got the knowledge or the time to go across different disciplines and analyze, have they come up with the right conclusions themselves. Maybe it's about funding. Maybe it's a bully tactics in the scientific community to bully people into not analyzing it, or threatening them to not publish it, as some creationists say happens. And they were evolutionists, and they started questioning it. They were bullied, and then they were threatened. They were even threatened with their qualifications being stripped from them. So nothing surprises me. Okay, remember, I know God's real, and I know there's a real devil. The devil, I mean, let's face it, he doesn't play by the rules. He is a mean mother hubbard. Okay, he is going to try and stuff people's lives up and ruin them, and use as much deception and lies, etc., as he can. And so I've no doubt that if he's using people in the scientific world to bully and intimidate or try and ruin people's lives, I've no doubt that's exactly his ball game. It's exactly what he would want to do. Okay, so he's trying to deceive the world and not believing the truth, and unfortunately, people have been sucked into it. I could mock it and say, and do the illustration of, I could do this. I mean, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe mocking is not the best way when you're trying to be reasonable. But there is a interesting children's sort of story, and it talks about a princess who kisses a frog, and then the frog becomes a prince. Well, evolution, if you look at it very carefully, has the same idea. princess kisses the frog, and then a million years later he turns into a prince. It it actually fits story. It's like a story tale. Really is. It's somehow believable that people believe this, and that is a scary thought that maybe what it just seems quite irrational. The fact that we have these monkeys and men, and why did the monkeys stop evolving and the men kept evolving? Ah, it's just crazy. Now, my actual prediction is um, they're going to keep pushing evolution, okay, even regardless of evidence. That evidence is not a requirement of science when it comes to evolution. They're going to keep pushing it, and they'll just put a blockade on anyone who disagrees with them. That's all. Simple as that. It's just simple. If you don't believe in us, bang, we'll stop publishing your work in the journals, and in the scientific community we'll make your name a laughing stock if you try and disagree with evolution. Easy. They'll just cut you out of the whole thing. So they've got the media and everything promoting. My prediction, I mean, I think it's not a prediction, I think it's an observation more than anything, is they're doing that, and that's what they will continue to do. Evidence aside, they will keep on brainwashing the masses into believing millions of years, evolution, etc. But then they're going to make a switch to, we believe aliens started life on Earth. Okay, so not intelligent design from a creator who created the universe, but aliens planted the seeds of life. Okay, that seems to be observation, not prediction. Okay, I won't say prediction. That seems to be observation. I actually had a friend who has a PhD and had studied many disciplines on the way to getting his PhD, and he was a smart cookie. We used to I had a discussion with him, and I I was trying to convince him about evolution, and he was trying to argue against me. Now, I knew the subject better than he did, by far, and his arguments were very easy to disarm and get rid of. I'm sure a more skilled opponent would have put up a bigger fight, but he didn't. It didn't take very long before I basically destroyed every argument he had. And he said, before he came to his final conclusion, okay, his final conclusion of how it's still possible, where he said, well, I believe aliens planted life on Earth. So it's not like I haven't come across this argument before, okay. And he brought up with that one. He brought up the ace in the hole. You could say it's that haha, beat this. If we were playing cards, it would be like, here is the trump cards. Here is the winning hand. Beat it. Try and beat that. You can't beat that. I just want you to think of it logically for a second. You'd rather believe in aliens planted life on Earth than God created life on Earth. Okay, that's the first thing. Okay, you're making a conscious decision to rather believe in aliens than believe in God, because you want to believe in evolution so badly. You don't want to believe in God. Okay, that's the first obvious notable observation. The second thing that is really quite funny, I think, and easy to observe is you're putting the problem off planet so it can't be proven. Okay, you're shifting the problem of evolution to another world because you can't defend it on Earth. Therefore, you put it onto another planet where we can't actually argue against it, because there's no way you can prove it unless you've gone to the other world and then studied it from there. So you're just shifting the problem, trying to believe in it, knowing it doesn't stack up. Categorically, if life did not evolve on Earth, then it did not evolve on another planet. Okay? it the whole argument for aliens, the whole reasoning behind aliens existing is if life evolved on Earth, then it must have evolved somewhere else in space somewhere in one of these. There might be planets out there. It must have, by they're going by calculations and probability, have occurred somewhere else, and so there must be aliens out there. There must be. That's their reasoning for aliens. Now, when you say, okay, life didn't evolve on Earth, but maybe aliens planted it, you're actually, again, the whole point for believing in aliens was evolution on Earth in the first place. So you're just as very strange reasoning going on there. Okay? You're just saying that if life didn't evolve on Earth, simple as this, it didn't evolve anywhere. Okay? If it didn't happen here, it didn't happen anywhere else. If life couldn't evolve on Earth because it's a fairy tale and it can't happen, couldn't evolve on Earth, then it couldn't evolve on any other planet. Therefore, there are no evolved aliens. Therefore, they can't have come here and put life here. Okay, so the whole reasoning for aliens existing in the first place is evolution. By saying evolution didn't happen here because aliens put us here, you are being incredibly irrational. Okay. Now, it's not to say this could actually have happened. Now, could God have created the aliens and then they came over and put life on Earth? Oh my goodness! This is see how irrational, how stupid this all starts getting. If God created the aliens just so they could come over and put life on Earth, why not just believe that God created life on Earth in the first place? You don't need the aliens to fill your little your belief. You don't need to believe in evolution that badly that you have to come up with aliens and create aliens to try and substantiate your idea, your belief. Okay, the whole rise of aliens and science fiction movies is the evolution saying life is out there, and that's why the whole scientific community who are into it are so desperate to try and find life on another planet because they need so badly to try and say, hey, we found life on another planet, this proves evolution. They can't prove it on Earth, so they're looking on another planet to try and prove it on Earth. Again, you're having a big problem. If you find, amazingly, scientists actually find life on another planet, does that prove life evolved on Earth? It actually strongly could imply it, could, I guess, imply it, but no, it actually more than anything says we've found life on another planet. It doesn't say how life on the other planet got there. Again, doesn't prove evolution, because you don't know if it was created on that planet or evolved on that planet. Okay? I would, if they find life on other planets, I would say that's very good evidence for possibility of evolution. Okay, but again, it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't prove it. It just shows possibility of something happening. But then it raises other possibilities. How did the life get there? If life was created on Earth, what's to say it wasn't put there from people on the Earth? And so you could have these like programs on TV about alien astronauts and all this sort of stuff. Who's to say we, an advanced civilization of Earth, didn't travel to Mars, for instance, and that we developed spaceships and spacecraft and all that and traveled off-world to different worlds thousands of years ago, and so made it to Mars, and life was transmitted from Earth to Mars or to other planets. So you can, it's just it's a really silly stream to go down, and again, completely not provable or even evidence of proof, even if they find anything. So I think no, don't go to the extremes. You don't need to. Just look at the evidence available. Does the rock layer, the geology, fit what it's supposed to fit? Does it really have transitional forms or fossils? Or does it fit the creation account that there was a global flood, and these animals have been buried rapidly, and when we dig them up, have they been buried rapidly? Is there evidence of a flood? Is 3/4 of the world covered in water? Okay, I think there's strong evidence to support a flood. 75% of the world is covered in water. There is strong evidence of a global flood. Water through materials like ground, dirt, earth, and everything, when you flow through it, it produces sedimentary layer. It actually creates filters and makes sedimentary layer. We know that that's what it does by experimentation. When we find that all the land masses have sedimentary layers with fossils buried, that should be a big wake-up call that that there was a global flood and that there are sedimentary layers and that these rock layers have been formed rapidly. Therefore, it was a global flood. There aren't millions of years happening here at all. We're talking a big global catastrophe that happened once, okay? Not a repeatable experiment, a historic event that can't be repeated, therefore can't be verified by observation and can't be verified by a repeat, and so it is outside science. Cannot prove. Science is limited in what it can prove, because if it's an event that cannot be repeated, then it can't be scientifically proved. So and Noah's flood is perfect as that. What we can do is look at the evidence, look at the rock layers, how they look like they've been formed, look at the fossil record, we look at the evidence for it, and we can decide from there. And overwhelmingly, evidence is in favour, again, of creation and not the millions and millions of years of buried, which evolution sort of requires. The Grand Canyon, hey, creationists have come up and proven again the Grand Canyon didn't take millions of years to carve out. It was a rapid event, and time again they keep proving the so-called evidences for evolution fail, and creation evidence is more strongly supported. Let's have a look at some real obvious things, evidences that really shouldn't be overlooked. When scientists know the moon is drifting from the Earth, and they can measure its drift. Okay, they know it's drifting away from at a certain speed and distance from the Earth, and they've been measuring how far it's been drifting away, based on their calculations, and you could say assumptions, okay, because they've got to assume has it been drifting at the same speed, etc., etc. But even at modest records and even really conservative figures, the moon drift means the world can't even be 100,000 years old, based on the how far the moon has travelled. Not even 100,000. We're not talking millions of years or billions of years. We're talking not even 100,000 years could actually have occurred because of the moon. And it's where it would have to be in less than 100,000 years ago. The moon would have had to have been sitting on the actual Earth. Okay, that's how close it would have had to have been. Less than 100,000 years ago. Okay, so it can't actually be that old. It's really implausible. It fits better that it's in the thousands of years bracket, not even 100,000s of years or millions. Okay, that's just the moon alone by observation. Now that's scientific observation and working backwards. Naturalists use the same thing, but they look at rock layers and they use the same theory and look at natural observation. But what if there is a global catastrophe, as in a global flood, then that there breaks the naturalist cycle, and that the results are skewed. Okay, Again, you could say with the moon, well, maybe there was a global catastrophe to make the moon appear uh, younger. Maybe it was further out and it got hit by asteroids and got pushed close to the Earth, and now it's drifting back out. And you could come up with some quite elaborate ways to try and prove that maybe the moon, why the moon isn't, why it could be millions of years old instead of thousands. You could go to all those things using the same reasoning and logic as Noah's flood, but we have 3/4 of the planet covered in water, whereas they've got no evidence for that the moon is being shifted backwards and forwards by meteors to try and keep the age distorted. Okay, so there's no real evidence for that happening. We just have more evidence saying no, the moon's been drifting and our planet isn't that old. Um, okay, but I'm trying to be reasonable. Okay, trying to be reasonable and give you guys the benefit of the doubt that you are being reasonable as well and logical. Okay, the other one is deserts. Now, deserts grow at a certain rate, it seems, from since they've been measuring them, how far they spread, and you have to make the assumption of have they been spreading at the same rate. Since I'm observing them, they have. There's the pretty constant rate of spread, and they only go back only about 4,000 years. The desert, the biggest desert, the oldest deserts are only about 4,000 years old. Okay, so that is a good age indicator. That goes back to about after the flood, which actually would be perfect timing. Okay, exactly according to the Bible's timing, that would be about right. Another one is coral reefs. Again, calculated growth only about 4,000 years again, and that goes nicely back to a global flood age, and then the coral reef are growing after that. So that really nicely, and they parallel in ages, which is nice, which strongly, I believe, supports the flood. We get the, that's two, salt or the different saltiness of the water in the sea. Now this is an interesting one because the minerals and everything coming from the earth going into the sea, they are measuring that it's getting saltier every year. It's been getting gradually saltier and saltier and saltier. It strongly predicts that by the salty factor of the water, that the sea, by calculating that we can't be millions of years old or anything. It's got to be in the thousands, okay? Otherwise all the sea life would be dead. That's just from the water. Okay, that could be, again, the flood causing that age to occur. What's another nice one? Oh, yeah. And we're getting space dust from outer space coming onto our planet. It comes through the atmosphere and it actually is on our planet, and they calculate how much space dust is actually always coming on, landing on there. We haven't got enough of it on Earth to for it to have accumulated to any vast amount, even close to millions of years. We haven't even got any amount. So the amount of dust coming on the Earth, we haven't got enough build up of it for a long age. Now that's quite good. And so time and time again, when we look at different world clocks, there just doesn't seem to be the great vast ages. We have thousands of years being displayed by trees and tree rings, but not out of the biblical time frame. They're all nicely matching the biblical time frame. Nothing really matching the evolutionary time frame at all. I believe if more study and more energy was spent into the aging and the calculating the age of the Earth, I think evolution would fade as a distant memory from people's as a theory. because it would get increasingly improbable that it actually occurred in the first place, based on the time. I can't emphasize enough that there is no evidence for an old Earth. There is no evidence that dinosaurs are millions of years old. There is no real reason to believe that. There is no evidence that anything is even 100,000 years old. This is, I believe, the only reason why we do think in that way is because of total bombardment and indoctrination by the media, TV, books, and we've been taught that way from childhood all the way up to think in those ages, and so it is incredibly hard to think outside of that realm of thought. But evidence-wise, there is no actual reason to believe in them. It is only a reason to believe in them is to support the evolutionary thought, to give it some credence. And do we have to give it credence to something that's not true? I don't think so. What are some of the other things that I found were really interesting about evolution? Okay, just trying to think of some of the other evidences I came up with, which for creation. Oh yeah, the nice one. Coal, formation of coal or oil. It was thought to be millions of years it took for oil or coal and things like that. And even peat is thought to take a long time for peat. The theory was Yellowstone Park. They said they found something like 20, more than 20 layers, tree layers. So they're saying a forest would grow up and then die and be buried, and then another forest on a higher layer up would grow and die, and then it would be buried, and then higher up another forest, 22 layers, saying, oh yeah, the world can't be thousands of years old because we found 22 layers of different forests in Yellowstone Park alone. So in the ages of the rings of the trees suggest a certain age of the trees, so 22 layers, it's way older than 6,000 years old. Okay, so they were trying to prove it through forests dying, getting buried, dying, and getting buried. Well, when Mount St. Helens in America erupted, it pushed over all the trees in front of it, and the trees went into the lake and just floated on the lake and covered the entire lake. I saw a video on it, and the lake is just covered in logs, just trees. And the trees were rubbing up against each other, and after just a few weeks, they had rubbed all the bark off them, and they were stark white. You could see no bark; it was just all white trees floating on this lake. Now that tells you a lot, and that should actually, if you're an evolutionist or a scientist, raise your eyebrows like, whoa, the implications of that are pretty significant. Why, you might ask? The bark being rubbed off by the trees by this catastrophe means the bark has floated to the bottom of the lake and has made a layer of bark. Why is that significant? Well, peat bogs are supposed to be formed from forests that had then died and created layers of the bark and the wood, and that's how peat bogs, and they're supposed to take vast ages to form, because of dead forest dying and creating these big thick layers of peat. But if one event like Mount St. Helens can level a forest, push trees onto a thing, the peat, the bark and all that, it gets pushed off and then floats to the bottom and creates a big layer, that happened in weeks and not in purportedly thousands of years, okay, or even longer. Okay, so that is a big wow. Changes dates significantly when you look at things. Then the trees got water laden and they sunk root first, which they would. Heaviest part sinks first. They're water laden and they start sinking down into the mud at the bottom of the lake. Now, because of the weight of the trees, they sunk at different levels into the lake floor in the mud. Peat, again, the muddy with the bark layer. This all looks very, very familiar when you compare it to Yellowstone Park. Layers of trees buried, okay? They're at different levels. Now, if that lake, think of what would happen if that lake evaporated and the trees are stuck in there in the thing, and it's gone solid, the mud's gone solid around them. And then the top sticking out of the ground would all erode, the wood would all decay, but in the ground it would still be there. When you dug as a geologist and were digging around, you would see what would appear to be different layers of trees. Um, and that's, I believe, what has happened at Yellowstone Park. Yellowstone Park, with its different layers of 22 or 25 or whatever it is, layers of trees, actually supports a global flood. It actually supports that the trees were floating on the floodwaters at Yellowstone Park, have rubbed against each other. All the bark from all the millions of trees that were floating on the floodwaters at the time of the flood would have created all these peat bogs. They would have then sunk into the mud and they would be buried. And Yellowstone Park then shows testimony, based on the evidence of Mount St. Helens, that it is actually showing that there was a flood above Yellowstone Park at some stage, which made these different layers of trees. Again, Yellowstone Park isn't a testimony to a long-aged Earth, a long period of time like evolution wants. It is actually testimony to a global flood. It is completely paralleling what happened at Mount St. Helens, and the evidence that we find at Yellowstone Park actually should be, and looking at the observational evidence of Mount St. Helens, proves beyond a shadow of doubt a global flood, at least over Yellowstone Park. Okay, so it's crazy. It's crazy. As I say, I love it when evolutionists try and come up with their theories, because generally they fit the creation theory far better with the evidence. Okay.